My name is Catherine Michaelis, and I'm interviewing Joe Hurley for the Women's Marches Oral History Project. Today's date is January 9th, 2018, and this interview is taking place in Special Collections and Archives at the Georgia State University Library. So, Joe, we're going to start out with an easy question. So, what year were you born and where were you born?
I was born in 1979 in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay. And how did you end up in Atlanta from New Haven?
Yeah, from New Haven. So when I was about 12 or 13, my family moved to North Carolina, and we stayed there. You know, that's where my parents still live. And how I got to Atlanta was I was in library school at the University of Pittsburgh and finished up and applied for a job at Georgia State University, and that's how I moved to Atlanta, and that was in 2009.
And what's your profession?
I am a librarian. Yes.
So can you describe your family's political leanings?
Yeah, I'd say my parents are fairly on the liberal side, of not left leaning, but not conservative, just somewhat liberal. My dad was actually in the mid 70s, I think. He ran for local office in either New Haven or West Haven. I don't remember which town. He did not win, and that ended his attempt at a political career. But so he's always been interested in politics. He took me to a Bill Clinton rally in, it was like 90, 91, 92, whenever that was, and I actually saw Bill Clinton. And so I remember being at a state fair in Connecticut, and my dad still knew a bunch of politicians. He stayed active even though he wasn't a politician. And I remember we were at this Durham State Fair in Connecticut. I think it was like 11, and he's like, "Oh, there's Senator Chris Dodd," or maybe he was a congressman at that time. I don't remember. He's like, "Oh, let's go up and talk with him," because my dad somehow knew him. So I remember meeting Chris Dodd, and I just remember being aware of that. So yeah, so. To answer your question, my family is my parents are somewhat on the liberal side.
So your dad ran as a Democrat when he...
You know, it was local, so I don't know if there were party affiliations. Okay. So I don't know. I assume if he was going to run, it likely would have been as a Democrat, but I don't know, because local parties, a lot of times there's no political affiliation, so I don't know.
Okay.
I should ask him.
So, what political party do you support?
I support the Democrats. I'd say I'm a little more left-leaning than just typical Democrats, but that's really all. You know, if you want someone in office who, if I want to vote for someone who has somewhat similar political views to what I have, and a candidate who I would see pushing the country in a direction where I'd like to see it go toward, it would most likely be a Democratic candidate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just curious, what's your wife's political affiliation like?
Yeah, so my wife is actually not a citizen. Mm-hmm. She is German. She's a German citizen. She has a green card. And we have very similar political views. Obviously, she cannot vote in the United States because she's not a citizen. But yeah, we have.
You guys are on the same page about
most
things. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So, besides the things that you've already mentioned that you did with your dad, have you been involved in any political activities in the past?
Let's see. I don't think I've been involved with political activities like in an official party capacity. I am involved with like local activism in the city of Decatur, advocating for safer streets, safer bike lanes, things like that. But they're not associated with a political party. So I don't think that I would say that I'm do political activism.
So are there any particular groups or organizations that you're involved with in Decatur?
Yeah, I'm involved with the Decatur Bicycle Coalition. Actually, I'm a co-founder of it, and we've been pretty successful getting some nice bicycle infrastructure, some funding allocated for bicycle infrastructure. Yeah.
That's interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about that, just because?
Sure. Yeah. So we started this group. It was Tonio Andrade, who's obviously a Decatur resident. He's also a history professor at Emory. We started this group with about 4 other people, maybe 2.5 years ago. We just met over some email forum about bicycle infrastructure, and we decided we should do something about it in Decatur. Since we formed, we now meet with the city of Decatur. We're starting to meet on a quarterly basis with city officials. We've gotten support from the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition, and we've advocated for safer, protected bike lanes throughout the city. We were able to get a little over $1 million in funding for a protected bike lane that will run along Commerce Drive in Decatur, and then we were able to get a comprehensive cycling and pedestrian plan funded for the city of Decatur. That was, I think, about $25,000. And so we're in the city of Decatur, which supports bicycle infrastructure, so it's not, it is always challenging because there are people who are opposed to it because for whatever reason they feel that they need to, any reduction in road space for cars is a problem, but it's been remarkably, there's been less resistance than we were prepared for, so that's nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
So besides your dad, is anybody else in your family active in politics, or have they been?
Yeah, in my immediate family, one of my sisters, I have 2 sisters, and one of them, she is somewhat active, on the local scene. She lives in Morganton, North Carolina, and I believe she's put together a couple petitions for various local projects. So in that way, she's been politically active. But again, I don't think she's politically active in a party capacity. Yeah.
So did you guys talk about politics much when you were growing up? Was it something that was kind of always part of your family conversations, or?
Interestingly, no. I don't have very many memories of talking about politics. I just remember my dad talking about how he ran for office back in the 70s, and then my dad was, maybe it was just my age, but I remember him being very interested in the Clinton campaign, for Bill Clinton's campaign. Beyond that, we didn't really talk about politics too much. So,
So before the Women's March on January 21st, had you ever participated in a march or protest before?
You know what? I was actually thinking about that, and actually after the march, I was thinking about that too. Actually, the night of the march, after it ended, because I saw. I was watching CNN and Moore. What's his name? What's the documentary maker's
Michael
name?
Moore?
Michael Moore, yeah. Michael Moore was giving an interview. He spoke at the march. I couldn't hear him from where we were at the march, but we saw him on CNN later that night, and he was discussing how he was amazed at how large the size of the crowd was, and he said that a lot of people he had talked to, it was the first time they had ever participated on a march at the mall. And I was actually thinking, well, yeah, that's actually, I think that this may actually be the first protest march that I participated in. I've always been interested in politics and fairly left-leaning politics, but I don't think it wasn't until then that I realized that I'd never really participated in a protest march. So that was my first one.
So just for the record, which march did you attend?
Oh, right. So I attended The Women's March on Washington in 2017.
And why did you decide to march?
Why did I decide to march? There were several reasons. Even though it was the Women's March on Washington, the main reason why I was there because I saw it as the largest protest march against Trump. So I wanted to voice my support for any group, or almost any group that would stand up to Trump and present, a large crowd as opposed to Trump. So that was my main reason, because it was, even though it wasn't billed as an anti-Trump march, in reality, it at least from my perspective, it was. And then I also went too because I support women's rights, and Trump is just just an atrocious human being when he talks about women. So I wanted to go to support that as well. Yep.
So was it, besides just wanting to be part of something big, was there a reason that you chose to go to DC rather than staying in Atlanta and marching here?
Right, yeah, so I knew that there was going to be, well, actually, when I saw on Facebook or on the news, wherever I saw it first, that there was going to be this march on Washington, Women's March on Washington, I told my dad that night that I was planning on going, and he said that he was interested in going too. So I think within about 2 to 3 days, we had bought tickets and booked a hotel. We knew we wanted to be there. So at that point, there was not, I don't recall that there was the local marches that haven't been announced, so I didn't even know that there was going to be one in Atlanta. But I still would, even if there had been one, even if I had known at that time, I still would have gone to Washington because I really wanted to. I felt it important just to be one more person to increase the size of the crowd to show Trump that there is a huge segment of the population that in no way agrees with the way that he wants to move the country and the way that he presents himself and talks about others. So it was really, again, it was really important for me to be just one more person in the crowd to make it that much larger. So that's why I wanted to go to DC, because I felt like that was the main place to really, if you could, right, for people who could, to go there to show Trump, who was there that day, how many people are opposed to him.
So other than just sort of standing up against Trump, were there any issues, specific issues that were, I guess, what are the most important issues to you that motivated you to go?
Yeah, so there are so many. It's hard to start, figure out where to begin. One, obviously, just the tape of him, the Hollywood Access tape of him talking about women in that capacity. I wanted to go, and that's important to me to show that that's not okay. And yeah, it's just really interesting that that people thought that was acceptable for him to talk that way, and it was shocking to me that he was elected even though he talked that way and doesn't seem to have a problem with it. So yeah, general treatment of women was a big issue. Another really big issue for me was the environment, which again, the March on Washington was not a march, was not an environmental march, but there were many protest signs there that were pro-environment. So the Trump administration, Trump himself has no regard for environmental regulations. In fact, I would say that my biggest issue with Trump, besides his sexism and just his sheer incompetency, is his view on regulations, whether it be environmental, whether it be workplace regulations, labor regulations, what have you. is that he is opposed to regulations. And if you go back and you look at older talks by Trump, I remember in the maybe the early 2000s, he was on some special on PBS that I was watching, and it was him, talking. It was like some hour-long talk by him. I couldn't watch all of it, but I did not want to watch all of it. But he was just basically talking about how there was a certain Middle Eastern country that was able to build this amazing thing in the water because they don't have regulations. They don't have like clean water regulations or regulations about the wildlife in the water there. So they were able to build something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was praising that, and then he was talking about the U.S. and how there's so many regulations he can't get his projects done. So it's clear it was, from what I know about Trump, is that he's always been opposed to regulations, even in the 70s when with those the rent the lawsuit they have against low-income renting, which is mostly about minorities, and he was very opposed to it. So it seems to me that his whole career is battling regulations, and he wants to end regulations. And I actually see regulations as like a very positive thing. I know a lot of people don't, but that's what I would say the post-1945 world that the West is so familiar with is built on regulations and on shared regulations between North America, the United States, Canada, and Europe. So these are, we have regulations that protect the environment, protect workers, protect minorities, and I just see his entire career as being wanting to bring down regulations. So when he became president, that was my biggest fear, that he would start stripping regulations, and he's already doing that. So that if you want to categorize that, I guess the main reason why I was there is just because of what Trump stands for: anti-regulation, anti-women. He's racist. Those were the biggest issues. And in a way, I mean, it just seemed like he could disrupt, what Western powers have, tried to bring forth for since 1945, which in many ways, there are problems with it, neoliberalism and globalization, but a disruption from Trump is not a positive,
thoughtful disruption.
Yeah, it's not a thoughtful disruption. So I just feel his whole being is problematic. So I wanted to go and march against that.
Okay, fair enough. So what other issues did you see represented at the march? And do you have any particular opinions on the issues you saw?
Yeah, so there were, obviously there were a lot of anti-sexist, posters up, people were holding. There were quite a few environmental posters up as well. So those were some big issues that were represented. There were quite a few pretty funny protest signs, making fun of the Putin-Trump relationship, which I found to be amusing. I think, and a big issue was really, people kind of coming together to make a stand against Trump and hate in general, because he does seem to stand for hate. So I saw a lot of signs that were, proclaiming, love Trump's hate, things like that. So those were the big issues that I noticed.
So before you went up to the march, what were you expecting or hoping to get out of the experience?
Let's see, what was I hoping to get out of it? I wasn't really hoping to get anything really for myself out of it. Again, no matter how much cost, I just wanted to get up there and be a person in the crowd. So I just really wanted there to be this huge show of force against Trump, and it was a tremendously large crowd. It was so big we couldn't even, we couldn't see the stage where people were speaking. It was hard to move around. There were it was just an endless sea of protesters. So I don't know if I really wanted to get much out of it, other than I wanted to be a part of it, and not just because a lot of people may say things like, "I want to be a part of history." That wasn't it. Like, I just wanted to be there, just to show Trump that I won't stand for him or many other people like that. Yeah.
Cool. So you said you went with your dad?
Went with my dad and one of my nieces. So I went with my niece Stephanie, who was at that time she was 21. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we all flew up there together. They drove down to Atlanta, and we flew up to DC.
Mm-hmm. So obviously some of your friends and family were supportive of you. Were most of your friends and family pretty supportive of you attending the march? Or did you tell?
Yeah, I told people. Some of my immediate family was not. I did have one Trump supporter in my immediate family. Obviously, she was not pleased about it. Most of all of my close friends, who I associate, all my friends were supportive of it. I have friends on Facebook who were not. Just people that I'm friends with on Facebook who maybe I've gone to high school with, or people I knew in Connecticut, who were either anti-Clinton or maybe pro-Trump, and who clearly didn't appreciate that I was going. But in general, most of the people that I know were supportive of it. In fact, most of the people that I know and I'm friends with in Atlanta either went to DC or went to the march in Atlanta, and then other friends across the country either went to DC or went to their local cities' marches, women's march. So,
how did you know that your Facebook friends who were anti-Clinton or pro-Trump didn't support you? Did you have direct interactions about you going to the march?
So I didn't have direct interactions about the march. I did post pictures of the march when I was there, and most comments were like, "Yeah, great," what have you. I don't remember the comments, but the night of the election, before I went to bed, Trump was up a point or something, and I was just shocked, and So before I went to sleep, I just posted on Facebook that if I wake up in the morning and I see that Trump is elected, and I said something like, "I'm gonna move back to Germany and I'll never look back." And I had a couple of people, made comments like, "Just go, don't come back," things like that, So. And there were people that I was surprised. Some people I was kind of surprised about, but that's Facebook. You don't know these people that well. So anyway, so I knew that some people did not support that, and but no, I didn't really have anyone come up to me and say, "Wow, why were you at the march?" I don't support that. And again, I guess this probably as what we've seen in the media, that most people just associate with like-minded people. So I haven't had any resistance, except for a few people in my family who are pro-Trump.
Did you talk about it with people at work, either before you went or after you came back?
I did talk about it with some people at work before and after, and again, these are people that I knew had a very similar political outlook that I have, and so. I talked to people who went to the march, the women's march here in Atlanta, we all had positive things to say. All the people I talked to who went to the one in DC, my friends who went to the one in DC, everyone was surprised at the size of the crowd and how, positive everybody was who went. People went there because they were angry, about Trump being elected and just about who he is. But there was no anger in the crowd in D.C., and I suspect that all across the country there wasn't anger. So
I've heard that from pretty much everyone.
Okay, yeah, it was a really pleasant experience. For my, when I was there, it was very pleasant, and I've talked with others, and it was just an overall positive march.
Okay, cool. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes.
Okay.
But so you and your dad and your niece, you said you guys flew up there together.
Yes.
So once you got to DC, where did you stay?
We stayed, even though we booked a flight. I mean, really, it was within 3 to 4 days, something like that, after it was announced. And we could only find a place that wasn't, like over $1,000 a night up in Bethesda. So we stayed in Bethesda, Maryland, right above the Metro line, and so that we went. My dad, all three of us went toward the end of the inauguration. Actually, we flew in the day of the inauguration, and we took a Metro line right to Arlington Cemetery, and we walked up to the highest point in Arlington Cemetery as Trump was giving his talk, and we could actually kind of hear it, the echo a little bit. We couldn't really make out what he was saying, but there was hardly anybody there. Someone else was there, and they were like live streaming on their phones, and we could overhear it, and it did start to rain. I definitely remember that. It did rain, because I was standing out there. Regardless of what Trump said, the sun never came out. I just remember hearing what he was saying, and I was like, oh my God, this is darker than I ever imagined it could be. So that was like a depressing start to the whole thing. I was like, oh God, this is just going to be worse than I could have ever imagined. But then we went, we took the train up to our hotel, and then after we checked in, we came back down to the mall, around the mall, and just tried to see what was going on. There was still the parade going on. I mean, Trump's speech had ended, but the inauguration day celebrations were still going on, and all three of us were really surprised at how few people were down there. I mean, we were walking around, and there were very few people there to support Trump, and then there were some protest marches walking around that night, so we kind of watched them, and then that was the first day.
There were people just protesting the inauguration.
Yeah, they were just kind of I don't know who they were. Just like a younger crowd of people just marching down the street where they weren't allowed to, as the police were like telling them, to go, but they just kept on marching. It was just small crowds. And then that's how we got up there. And then the next day when we went to the march, should I talk about the march, or are there going to be more questions later?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you how the morning of the march, did you take the metro?
Yes. So the morning of the march, I got up really early. We were right in Bethesda. There was like places to get food, so I got up, got food, and brought it back to the hotel. And we decided that we would get an early start because we figured there would be a lot of people. I don't remember what time it was, but I could see the metro station from our window, and we were drinking coffee and eating bagels or whatever, and I was like, man, there's just a steady stream of people walking down there. So we got ready quicker, even though it was still very early, and we went down to the metro station, and it was just wrapping around forever. And I mean, I thought we were going to be there for hours because there's so many people. I mean, this is up in Bethesda, and yeah, so it actually did move somewhat quickly, but it was packed so tight. Like when we got to the station, when we got into the station, it was just like, you could barely stand on the platform. And then we got into the cars. The first car we got in, I think a couple cars had to go through because they were already packed. Again, so like we're talking about people coming up from further north. And then we finally got on a train, and it just, every stop we went on, just like people would move closer together until you could physically you really could not fit anyone else on the train. It was so packed and it was so hot. It was cold outside, but in the train it was really hot.
How long were you on the train?
It was maybe like 20 minutes. I don't remember. I mean, it felt like a while because you're just jammed in there. In fact, you didn't even need to hold on to anything because you're just packed in there. It was kind of crazy. And then I think we got my dad and my niece and I got a little separated because you just had to move. And I mean, we caught back up with each other. But yeah, there were a lot of people just from the get-go, and it just, when we got off the train and walked toward the mall, there were just tons of people in front of us, and then you look back and there were just people constantly coming, just nonstop.
So what were you thinking or feeling when you first got there and you saw the size of the crowd?
I was like, this is great. This was outstanding. So I was just in shock at how many people were there. Like, it was positive, right? How many people showed up. And then I was a little disappointed that we couldn't hear any of the speakers, even though because we did get there kind of early, and so we got somewhat close to where the stage was. I think we could see like the scaffolding above the stage, but we couldn't actually see people on the stage. And as you got closer to the stage, there were so many people that it was just like, it was this pressure where you didn't want to be there. Just people were moving in. We for hours, we tried to get closer, and then we were like, this is not, it's not going to happen. So we just kind of walked back a little bit, and then, we just kind of, where there was space to actually like move your arms, we just started talking with people. And I remember talking with one family from, I think they're from San Diego, so they flew out there from San Diego. Their whole family, it was like six people, we just had a great conversation about how we can't believe Trump is in office, things like that. And everything was positive, even though we were talking about what we felt like would be possibly the end of the world. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, I know that must be really must have been really heartening to see all those other people just know that
it was.
They were all there too.
Yeah, it was heartening to see people in lots of different age ranges. We saw people who like grandchildren, grandparents there. So it was some people made like a family outing of it. Multi generations were there. It was just a nice experience.
So can you talk a little bit more about the makeup of the crowd that you saw in terms of like diversity or...
Right. So actually the crowd was not, in terms of racial diversity, it was not very diverse. For sure there were minorities there. There were I did see some blacks there, and other ethnicities were there as well, but overwhelmingly the people who were there were white. It definitely was Women's March, so it seemed like the majority of people participating were women. Mm-hmm. But without a doubt, it was white females and white males there, and I was disappointed by that. I was hoping that there'd be more minorities. There just wasn't. But there were people of all different age groups. In fact, I saw a couple people in wheelchairs. One person I took a picture of. She was. She must have been in her 80s, maybe late 70s, and some of the older people were holding up signs. She had a sign like draped over her as a blanket and said like, "I can't believe it. I'm still protesting this shit." So that was interesting to see. You know, people, definitely veterans from the '60s, you know, coming back to protest. So that was.
So what were your feelings during and after the march?
During the march, it was just a positive feeling. You know, it was great to stand in solidarity with so many people who were, you know, obviously probably still are opposed to Trump's policies. So during the march, it felt it was a good feeling. I felt some hope, you know, for the current then state of the country. But you know, then after the march, you know, going back to the hotel room and watching and reading news, I was like, you know, just not feeling good. And I would say for quite some time after that, after the inauguration, I was not feeling good about the state of the U.S., the state of the world. I started checking the news obsessively, just hoping to hear something, you know.
On the day of the march, you did?
Well, on the day of the march, and then after, yeah. So, yeah, but.
So what did you guys do when the march was over?
When the march was over, we continued to walk with the crowd. I don't really know when it ended. There were so many people that we just kept on walking around, like large crowds of people. We kind of walked over to the White House to see if we could see anything, and there was lots of people there marching, and we just kept walking around. And at some point, there were still a lot of people, but at some point we just had to get food because we hadn't eaten all day. So we got some food, and then I think we just went back to the hotel and kind of talked about things and watched and read the news. But that was it. Yeah.
Was it as crowded going back as it was coming in?
I don't remember, and because I don't remember, it must not have been. I think there were still. I think it was still crowded, but I don't remember being jammed into the subway. But there were still a lot of people. I mean, there were just people everywhere. And then even the next day, you know, we went back down to the mall and went to a couple of museums, and there were still a lot of people around. So.
Cool. So let's talk about signs at the march.
Yes.
Did you carry a sign?
I did not. And again, it was like my first protest, and I realized that after that I was like, oh wow, I should have had a sign, should have made a sign, and I did not have a sign. My dad did not have a sign, neither did my niece. So we were signless, yes. But it was fine. I mean, I actually went there with a camera. I just took pictures of a lot of people's different protest and political signs. So
can you talk about some of the ones that were your favorites?
Yeah. So let's see. There was. I don't remember all of them. There's so many good ones. I have to look at my photos again. There were quite a few. You know, I won't get into detail, but like, you can't grab this. You know, I don't know, expletive, but that were graphic. There were. What was it? You know, again, the other ones with like older, you know, people. My dad probably should have helped to sign up, but, you know, I can't believe I'm still protesting this shit. There was some good ones there was one good one, I don't remember what it said. I do have a photo of it, I had to go back and read it, but it was Darth Vader, and it had this little, like, orange patch of hair coming out of it, and it was basically, you know, Trump saying something, and so it was funny. There were, off the top of my head, I don't remember. There were some that were really memorable. There was a really good one with Trump and Putin. It was like a 1950s Soviet propaganda looking poster, and it was Trump in like Soviet military wear, and I think he was like holding Trump that looked like a baby, and
I think I remember seeing that one that you put in the digital collection.
Yeah, I remember that one clearly. That was a good one. And then I remember this. So I took a picture of this guy. It's not a sign, but this was interesting. There was this guy in the crowd. he had this camouflage hat on, and it was just like a normal baseball hat. It was like a bent rim that you would just, it was a hat that you would see like, a hunter, like a good old boy, whatever, from the country wearing. But it had a sticker on it, and it said "fuck Trump." And, so it was just kind of jarring to me. Where this guy looked like, he was wearing Carhartts, just looked like, a country guy who would be, not to be stereotypical, but, well, I am being stereotypical here, but he looked like, what you would imagine a typical rural Trump supporter looking like. But he was at the protest with his, very typical kind of mountain-ish rural clothes, but he had a sticker on his camouflage hat that said "fuck Trump." So I definitely remember that one, nice. And that gave me hope too.
So did you chant?
We did chant, yeah. And actually I chanted a little bit, but my dad got really into the chanting.
Any ones in particular?
You know what? I don't remember. For some reason, off the top of my head, I can't remember the chants, but there were pretty common ones that I just don't remember at the moment.
Okay.
So.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
So you said that you didn't get to see any of the speakers.
That's right.
So did you watch any of them later, like on YouTube or anything?
I think I listened to a little bit of what Michael Moore said, and a couple others, but no. But I don't think we went back and listened to them. I never did. Yeah.
Did you see much law enforcement presence there?
No. I think because we were in the crowds. There were the night before there was a lot of law enforcement, and there were during the inauguration there was like a barrier set up that you had to walk through metal detectors, and there were law enforcement there. But the day of the march, if there were a lot of law enforcement officers, I don't recall it. So they didn't catch my attention. Again, if they were just probably so overwhelmed or not outnumbered, but the crowds were so large that it was just hard to even notice police officers, and I don't recall any police officers telling you where to go or where not to go. I think the barricades were left up from the night before, from the inauguration. They were left up at the mall, which made it caused like crowds to have to funnel in, and they couldn't flow as freely as they would want to. Like, we wanted to get to the stage. Actually, we wanted to follow the march when it happened, but there were so many people going the main ways. We wanted to go a couple like side streets, or not side streets, but different ways. And there were these barricades just left up from the night before that made it a problem. So I don't know if that was intentional or they just didn't have time to take anything down. But it did make the flow of the protest not go well. Yeah.
So did you see any counter protesters at the march?
No, I saw none.
None at all?
None at all. Absolutely none.
What did you think about the coverage of the march in the media?
It was all fake. No, I'm just kidding.
They were all paid.
Yeah.
How much did you get paid?
That's right. Let's see. I don't really watch the news that much. I'll read the news. What I was more interested in looking at was international coverage, and I remember looking at like the BBC and some German publications. I think I also may have looked at some English language, French publications. I was just kind of curious to see how, because I connected to Europe with my wife, I was really interested in how Europe perceived the march, and it was good to see. I think they had fairly positive, good coverage, and I think the coverage that I saw showed how large the protests were, not just in Washington, but throughout the country, and actually even in other countries there were protests. So I think in my opinion, the coverage of the protests was just fine. It wasn't. I don't think it exaggerated the the size of the crowd, the size of the protests. So I think the coverage was fine. I didn't notice any issues when any of the articles that I read. I didn't have an issue with it.
So, did you and your dad and your niece, manage to stay together during the march?
We stayed together, yeah, very close together.
Did you make a plan for if you got separated?
We did not make a plan, and our plan may have been, if we did have a plan, it probably would have just been call me on your cell phone and we'll find each other, but we did not know that cell phones would not work.
I was going to say, yeah, would you have been able to do that?
No. I mean, as soon as we got down there, cell phones weren't working the whole time, the entire time of the march. I don't think we got cell phone reception back until we were far away, maybe even till we got back to the hotel. Yeah, cell phones were there was no cell phone reception, so we had no plan, but we were not going to lose each other. I mean, there were just three of us. I mean, I guess it could have happened, but we would have found our way back to the hotel, just down on the line.
So, were there any moments that especially stood out to you throughout the day that you haven't mentioned yet?
Let's see. There was a moment when we were. Well, apart from, I really remember talking to this, which I mentioned before, talking to this family from San Diego. They just, it was the mom and all of her kids of varying ages, from the late teens up into their early 30s. We just had a good conversation with them just about the state of the world. But I remember there was a moment that stuck out to me is when we were close to this scaffolding that we could climb up. This was right on the mall, so we could see the Capitol in both directions of the mall. And so we climbed up the scaffolding, and I just remember looking in all directions and just seeing so many people, and seeing people on the edges of buildings. The crowds were so large that they were you're on the mall and the buildings around it. The crowds were spilling out on top of the not onto the top of the buildings, but if there was anything that you could climb on the side of the building, there were people up there. So there were just so many people that it was they were just on every surface that you could be on. Wow. People were there. So I remember just thinking this is good that there are that many people who came and disagree with Trump. So that I remember that pretty clearly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you feel emotional at any time during the march?
I don't. See, that's the thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing an emotional gene. A lot of times I don't get very emotional. So no, I didn't get choked up at all. I didn't feel very emotional. I felt worried, I guess, about Trump being the president, but I don't remember getting choked up for any reason. I do remember my dad, getting very involved, getting fairly involved in the protest kind of chants and slogans. So that I remember that. So obviously he probably felt more of an emotional reaction than I did.
So how did you feel about seeing your dad do that?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. So
cool.
Yeah.
So did you guys spend the night in D.C. after the march?
In Bethesda, yeah,
we
did. Yeah.
So and then you flew home the next day?
Yeah, we flew home, I think the next day. I think it was late the next day, or maybe it was the day after that. I don't remember exactly when it was.
So is there anything eventful or remarkable happen on your trip home?
Obviously, no, because I don't remember it. No, I think we just came home, and that was pretty much it. Uneventful.
So how did you feel the day after the march?
The day after the march, yeah. I just... I would say depressed is too strong of a word, but I just felt down, right? Because Trump was now the president. He gave that. I did listen to his inauguration speech, afterwards, and I couldn't believe how dark it was. And it was just, so yeah, I felt deeply troubled. I think, I just didn't. just didn't like the direction that he was going to lead the country. So I just felt troubled.
So it's been almost a year since the march now. I guess the question that I'm am planning to ask is, what have you been feeling since the march? But I guess that's kind of a whole year's worth of.
I could summarize that. I think. So I was really. So how have I been feeling? Well, I answer this in several different ways. Like, I was really hoping that there would be just kind of this constant protest movement against Trump, where like large crowds would come out, and it seemed like it was going to be that way because a few weeks after the march, the Women's March, there was the immigration protests that took place in airports, and I went to the one here in Atlanta. There were a lot of people, so it felt, and that I was just like, man, I'm going to go to as many protests that I can go to. And I felt like I was really hoping that there would just be a lot more protests, and that just didn't. There are small ones, but there aren't these large ones, and I really feel like that's necessary. In other countries, when there's political turmoil, people go to the streets. That doesn't seem to have people who took to the streets, one or two times in mass crowds. I guess it seems like under Trump, it seems like there should be more. So I'm a little disappointed about that, and obviously I'm not doing anything either. So maybe I should just be disappointed in myself as well. And then for a while, I was just like, watching checking the news, like Washington Post, New York Times, constantly. It's just felt like I had to know what was happening, because it seemed like there was something Trump would do like every couple times a week, and it was just like, kind of stressed out there for several months. But yeah, a year on, I'd just like to see more protests, and I'm still surprised that Trump is still in office. That there hasn't been impeachment proceedings. That's just a shock to me. Bill Clinton can get impeached over something that really wasn't it was something that was a problem, but Trump has done many other things that I'm still shocked. I'm able to not be as obsessive about checking the news, but I still worry, not just about this country, but about the entire world, because the U.S. has such strong influence. So I feel like there should be more marches. Obviously, Trump can't stand people when people oppose him, so it'd be great if there were another large march where took place across the country. So I'd like to see that.
So besides the protest at the airport, have you participated in anything else, like any other marches, or joined any invisible groups or anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, I came to, this wasn't specifically about Trump, but there was, when the Confederate Memorial controversies came up, there was a small gathering in Decatur that I went to about the Confederate Memorial statue at the square in downtown Decatur. So I went to that, but it was just more like an informational kind of thing. So I haven't gone to any other protests besides the airport one.
So would you be willing to do more? Like,
definitely
participate in other ones if they came up?
Yes, yeah, and I know there have been others that I haven't been to. There was the environment, the science. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the title of it.
March for Science.
March for Science, yeah. I think it started at Candler Park last spring. I wasn't able to go. I think I was had something going on, so obviously I wasn't as committed. I should have gone to that, but I didn't. But yes, I would definitely go to more, and I want to go to more, and I would like to see more large, very large protests.
So what do you hope will happen now, I guess, in the remainder of the whatever time Trump has in office?
I would like to see him get impeached.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else?
He's not going to change. He's not going to change his policies. He just seems to be dysfunctional. He's erratic. He could get us into a pretty bad war just because of his erratic behavior. I would like. I hope to see him removed from office. And I mean, I'm not a fan of Pence by any means. In fact, his social policies could be worse than Trump, which is a huge problem. But he is at least knows how to behave like as an official, which Trump does not. So I mean, Trump is just destroying the presidency, and he's actually destroying. I mean, from a global perspective, the United States is not well respected. Has always been, for years has been, made fun of. But people did take the U.S. seriously, and that I think is now over. And I think that may be irreparable, which is maybe not a bad thing. But it's just in this 1 year that Trump has been president. I don't know how it's possible for other countries, even 10 years after the Trump presidency, to take the U.S. as seriously as they once had, because there's now the U.S. has demonstrated that it can elect someone who is totally ill qualified, as doesn't respect long-standing policies. So I just think the damage that Trump has done to U.S. Global standing is maybe irreparable.
So that was the glass half full question. Now for the glass half empty question. Okay. So what, I guess you've already kind of answered this, but what do you fear the most?
I fear the Trump, I fear the EPA being stripped down to almost nothing under Trump, especially the last 4 years. So I'm afraid of, what that'll mean in terms of climate change, and I'm afraid of, some type of war, which could happen with North Korea. Or who knows, the way Trump behaves, he could just offend someone, and So I'm fearful of that, and I'm just also fearful about the long-term economic vitality and social vitality of the U.S. It seemed, Trump is stripping away a lot of, his policies are stripping away a lot of social welfare programs. Not that the United States ever had that many, but what little social safety net it had for people of lower incomes, he's eroding that and wants to erode it even quicker. So I'm fearful of that. The U.S. could, has always had strong, a large inequality problem. And it seems like it's gonna get worse under Trump, and it could take a long time to change that. So I just fear that the U.S. could just be increasingly be a not a good place to live for people with little means, and even for middle class families, it's not going to be a good place to live.
Do you think you would ever leave?
Yeah, so my wife is German. My son has a German passport as well, so he's an American and German citizen. I am serious about, when I said that we would move to Germany. We didn't, but yeah, I mean, it's
Well, there's still time.
yeah, it is. You know, I like what I do. Both my wife and I have good positions. I like what I do. So it'd be hard to move to Germany to find something comparable that would be, you know, as fulfilling. But I also, you know, have to think about my kid, my son. We have another kid on the way, so we'll have 2 kids, you know, and we have to think about their future as well. And you know, every day almost, it seems like Germany is just a better choice to raise a family. You know, there are actual social welfare programs there that, you know, everyone gets vacation there, no matter what kind of job. Well, I mean, most jobs you get, you know, 4 weeks of vacation. You get maternity and paternity leave. It's just, you know, property taxes are much lower. I'm just, you know, the education system's so much better. They invest in infrastructure. They, yeah, you know, so Germany is looking much better. I hate to, you know, if we do leave, you know, I kind of feel like because I am active on the not politically, but, you know, on the local scene of trying to make things better. And if I just leave, that's done. But, you know, I also have to think about my kid's future, and it definitely seems like Germany has a better will give them the opportunity to have a better life. So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, now maybe Europe is the new land of opportunity, not the U.S. anymore.
Yeah. We miss you, but I wouldn't blame you. So is there anything else that you'd like to say about just how you felt about the government's activities since the march happened?
Yeah, so I would say that, like, so really it's just when we talk about the government, like your federal government, it's really not just, I mean, the U.S. is problematic politically even before Trump, but it's really just the Trump presidency and his appointees that I feel are problematic. So I don't feel that the federal government is a problem. I really feel it's just Trump and who he brought into certain positions that are a problem. So, you know, I'm hopeful that after 4 years that hopefully he will not get reelected. And hopefully whoever does get elected will, you know, try to repair and bring in people who actually, you know, care about government as opposed to people who want to dismantle government. So the federal government as it is right now seems to still be functioning in the way, you know, as much as it can, even though there are people in the government who want to dismantle it. So I think that, yeah, and I would say that, you know, city governments have really stepped up, and that's one sign that I see that's hopeful. People are, you know, cities are becoming more economically viable, like actual city limits, and you know, many mayors said that they're still going to support, like, the Paris treaty, or is it the Paris treaty? Now I'm forgetting. The climate
change.
Yeah, I'm just thinking treaty is not the right word, but yeah. So I think that's a strong point that maybe, oddly enough, maybe local governments are, you know, moving in the right direction, where it used to be the opposite. The federal government was providing a good example. So there are positive. I do see a lot of positive things happening right now in cities politically. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have definitely been galvanized to maybe people who wouldn't have thought before about running for office and have kind of really been stepping up and
getting
involved. So
yeah.
That's kind of cool. So, was there anything about the march that surprised you?
I don't think there was anything that surprised me. I was glad to see the large numbers. I don't know if that surprised me. So
Okay.
I don't know. nothing that surprised me.
So for those of us who don't have the option of moving to another country, do you have any strategies that you could suggest to people for keeping sane? Or
Yeah, don't check the news every 10 minutes. I stopped doing that. That helps.
Gotta ration that out.
Yeah, I don't. You know, if you can't, if there's something you feel strongly about, and you really, there are so many problems. There have always been so many problems, but particularly now, there are so many problems. You know, when after Trump was elected, I did hear someone that I know. It may have been Rebecca Cerna, who's the director of the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition. I think she said you have to choose one or two issues and focus on those. Yeah, I mean, I remember her saying that. Maybe she shared. There was maybe someone else who said it, but you know, that's what I would say too. Like, if you feel strongly about something, focus on that and try to make that positive change. So for me, it's been working with local government to make walking and bicycling as a mode of transportation safer, so people can do that. So yeah, and then, you know, if you focus on the local, you may actually affect change, right? You may make a positive change, and so those little things do have a cumulative effect. Mm-hmm. So I would say, yeah, focus on what you feel passionate about changing, and you will change it in some capacity. Yeah,
that's good advice. So do you have any advice for anyone who's considering going to a big march in the future?
Yeah, if you're thinking about going, go. Like, don't hesitate. I mean, obviously if you can, not everyone can go, because it costs money. But if you see something, a march coming up, and you think, oh, I should go to that, then do it. To like for me, I should have gone to that. The Scientists for the Environment March, or whatever the title was, but I didn't, and I regret not going. So I would say, if you feel like going to something, just you should go to it. Again, it's one more person there that makes the crowd larger. If 80% of the people who want to go, they say yes, I'm going to go, then the crowd's going to be large.
So is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you'd like to say, or anything you want to talk about?
No. I just think going to the march was positive, and I hope to be able to participate in more, and I hope there are much larger ones.
Okay, cool. Well, that's all I have. So thanks a lot.
All right.